Tristan Nydam has announced yesterday that he's quitting the game professionally, which I remember interviewing him again for the Kings of Anglia magazine 3 or 4 years ago. What a lovely, polite young man he is. And he was on the cusp of some great things. He loved to tackle. He was always telling me, and he loved his. And of course, he made some starts. He was pushing himself into the first team squad. But unfortunately, a bad ankle break, wasn't it, Andy, or ligaments or ankle break?
All of it. Yeah,
he's called it a day, unfortunately. Andy, you knew Tristan well as well. You spoke to him many times. What disappointing is that people watch the Premier League and people run around earning £100,000 a week and think that's what a footballer's life is. But there's the other side of it.
Yeah, it's really sad, that one. Really, really sad. He's, as you've said, he's a really likable young man with a wise head on young shoulders, and to have kind of his dream. He'd been at Ipswich since he was 9 years old, and he made it as a football player at Ipswich Town. He played 20 games for Mick McCarthy in 2017-18 season. So not all of them under Mick, obviously. He left before the end of the season, but he played 20 games that season, and he wasn't out of place at all. He was thrown in earlier than he maybe should have been. Obviously, we'll all remember Emir Hughes and Tom Adeyemi barely kicking a ball that season. They were meant to be the Ipswich midfield, but their misfortune was Flynn Downs and Tristan Nydam's opportunity, and both of them came through and didn't look overawed at all, but really felt like there was a really good career ahead for him. But sadly, that night at Notts County in pre-season ahead of the first League One season was ultimately ended his career. Really, I remember it very vividly. The noise you could hear, the whole ground went quiet. Like you could tell a bad injury had happened. Obviously, we didn't know quite the extent of it at the time, but it's so cruel because he, again, having had a really tough year the year before, Paul Hurst loaned him out to Scotland, to St Johnstone, where it was a waste of his time, essentially. I don't think St Johnstone knew why they signed him. He barely played. He was hundreds of miles from home. His career stalled. By the time he came back, the club were battling relegation, and Paul Lambert probably rightly didn't want to chuck a teenage boy into that. But ahead of that season, just as that injury happened, he'd started to kind of push his cause again. This time at left back, he was making a bit of an impression at left back. We saw him over in Germany, didn't we, Ross? And he was doing well. He looked like he'd earned a place in the squad at the very least as a left back, but ultimately, so cruel. He did get back on the pitch. He played in the first game post takeover, which was a really strange experience. Such a joyous day it would have been for the club, but it was behind closed doors and a 0-0 draw with MK Dons. But the highlight of that was half an hour at the end from Tristan Nydam, who came on and looked like his old self. He was tenacious. He was putting himself about, putting tackles in, but that would prove to be his last game of professional football. He was released that summer and didn't find a new club. And the longer that went on, I began to worry actually that probably is. This is the way it's going to go. And then last night, he's obviously confirmed that. So really tough, really disappointing. I'm really sad for him because he did what so many of us probably dreamed of doing, and he made it. It just got taken away from him.
Yeah. A few thoughts, Roscoe. I mean, yeah, was that photograph of him and Wolfie and Andre and Flynn walking off the pitch against West Ham in a pre-season friendly? Beautiful, wonderful photograph of the 4 youngsters. And sadly, Tristan's sort of, is not going to make it like the other 3 are hopefully going to do so or are doing so. A few thoughts, Roscoe?
Yeah, when I saw that news last night, I was, it was just gutting to see, he's still young lad, 22 years of age. When he broke through, we won the Young Player of the Year awards back in 2016-17 season before his breakthrough season, and he had everything. I really did enjoy him playing. I was lucky enough to watch a lot of the academy games when he was breaking through, and I thought we've got a player here, and he was fantastic during that season. A young player coming through, and I remember seeing him in Germany with Andy and Stu, and thinking, oh, this could be the year for Tristan to really kick on, play well, I wasn't actually at the Notts County friendly, but I remember just seeing the articles and seeing the tackle and going, "Oh, this is bad news." And I remember Andy actually interviewing him in Germany, and we thought, yeah, this is going to be him, the kicking on. And then just injuries happen in football, but sadly that injury has ended his future career. But he's always been a good lad. Always had opportunity to chat to him a few times myself. And it's always great to see young academy players coming through, and he was one of those where you thought, we've got a player here. And when he got loaned out to St Johnstone, we thought that was a bit of a random one, a bit of a waste one. And I actually spoke to Liam Craig, who was one who captained the Youth Cup winning side in 2006. He was at St Johnstone at the time. I think he's still there now, actually. And I was speaking about how polite and how well he was. He trained so hard, even though he was so a long way away from home. He was just such a nice lad, and it's sad to see that this has happened, but I'm sure he's going to have a big future in whatever he does next, because he is such a great lad. So best of luck, Tristan.
I'd agree with that. I think there are some players that are set up for a fall after their careers end. Obviously, Tristan's has ended way earlier than anybody would have hoped for him. But there are some that can deal with it well, and there are some that can't. And I'm sure there are going to be some tough times, already been some tough times for Tristan over these months, and there'll be more to come. But I think he's in a really good, really the right kind of person to deal with this really well, actually, and do something really, really special with it potentially. And maybe look at Kieran McKenna, for example. Kieran McKenna lost his career at a similar age to injury. And I'm not suggesting that Tristan's necessarily going to go on and be the manager of Ipswich Town, but you don't have to let that be the end of it, do you? And Tristan is the kind of character, whether it's in football or outside football, he's one that I'd back to do that. You mentioned that interview, Ross. That made me that interview I did in Germany with him. It never actually got published because it was all written up, and we were kind of waiting to use it the following week and it was him talking about just how excited he was to get his career going again. So a few days later, that injury happened, and we never got to use it. And that picture that we've just flashed up as well. This is another one that I love this picture so much. But the thing that makes me really sad about it is Flynn Downs, Luke Wolfenden, Andre Dazelle, and Tristan Nydam. It's before Paul Hurst's kind of final dress rehearsal with Ipswich against West Ham. Those four never actually played a single minute of football together for Ipswich Town. They played brilliantly that day, the four of them, against West Ham, but the four of them were never on the pitch at the same time for a single minute, which is really sad in itself.
Well, look, Tristan, if you do listen to this, I don't know if you do or don't, but very best of luck to you with what comes around the corner. We know we've all met you and interviewed you, and you're a very, very nice and polite, decent young man, and you're going to have a fine future ahead of you in whatever you do. So good luck to Tristan for that. It's sad his football's career professionally is over, but who knows what the future is for him.